This is Gemara Avodah Zarah Daf Samoch Tes, and we're holding on Samoch Tes and Beis, the second white line, and today's share has been dedicated by a close friend of the Daf as Eschos Alias Neshama for Esther Reyzel Basar Meir, whose yard site is on Beis Elul, the Daf of today. B'siyata Deshmaya, the incredible Koyach HaTorah. Every word of Torah, Daf of Gemara should bring the neshama of Esther Reyzel Basar Meir to a higher and higher place in Gan Eden Shalmaila, closer to the Kisei HaKavod, and be a Militz Yashar on such an auspicious day for her entire mishpacha. We're holding on. The second white line teaches the Gemara. We're in the middle of discussing how we just had a raya from a sheretz, an achbar, a mouse, and Rav Shishas was the one that explained that a mouse has different rules. Says the Gemara, my Rava. So Rava comes along and he comments, Zelchisa, Noisein Tam, the Fagam Mutter. As we originally thought, and before we got involved in the lengthy discussion, Rameir and Rav Shimon, says Rava, very simply, whenever it gives a bad taste, it's going to be Mutter. The case of the Achbar, V'achbar Rabbi Shechra, and the mouse and the beer, Lo Yodana my time. I do not know, says Rava, Lamaisa. It should be Noisei Tam Nefgam, therefore it should be Mutter, says Rava. I do not know, time of Derav. Mishum is because the Kasam Noisei Tam Nefgam is Ulcer, and if less Hilchos Lekav say we don't pass that one. Mishum the Kasam Noisei Tam Nefgam is Mutter, V'achbar Rabbi Shechra. And maybe there is something interesting going on over here, that a mouse enhances the taste of the beer, and maybe that's the reason why that case it was mutter. But in general, of course, a natalab noisitam nefkam will be, that's the reason why it was ulcer, because it was mashbiach. But general, it will be a negative taste, and it will be mutter. Ibayilo, says the Gemara, let me ask you Nachash Shayla. As we turn over to Samach Tesam and Aleph, what about the Achbar? Nafal Goychala, didn't fall into beer, but rather it fell into vinegar. Mai, what's the din? Amar Lei. On the top line of Samach Tesam and Aleph, Amar Lei, Rav Hillel, Rav Ashi, Rav Hillel says to Rav Ashi, Avi Ovda be Rav Kahana. The Asar Rav Kana says such a case is Asar. Rav Kahana, Asar Rav Kana. Amr Leahu Imartuti Imartat. A mouse is broken into small pieces, and that is the reason why the din will be different. Ravina Savar, so Ravina held that it's not so simple. You have to estimate the mouse that there will be bittul when there's 100 times itself. Amar loy garami chuma. Say no, it's no less than chuma detnan chuma oile. Pechanumeya chuma is batal in 101. But I asked the Gemara, I'm there of Tachliv Argizler Ravina. Telma ketavlin shel kejuma. Maybe it doesn't have a din of stam truma, but a din of a tavlin, a spice of truma, b'kedei dami, and therefore it's lobatel taimayu. It's never going to be batel because anything put in for a tam will never be batel. Says Rav Achai, shir bechala bechamshin. So Rav Achai argued. Rav Achai said, you know where the bittel is in this case of the achbar nafal l'goychala. The mouse in vinegar is going to be bottle in 50. Shmuel Rav Ika, Shir b'shechra b'shitin. Said no, there's a regular din of bottle b'shishim v'elchasa. Aidi b'shitin. Both are really bottle b'sixty v'chein kol yisurin shabbat Torah. All yisurin in the Torah, unless it's a classical nisan lefgam, the rule will be that it'll be bottle b'shishim, the regular din of bittul, like we know. And before we move on to the Mishnah, let's just see a very critical Rashi. Rashi comes along at the end of this long and complicated sugya. They sit down the Fugram. It says Rashi, all Yisurim Shabbat Torah batal b'shishim. V'chein hilchas haravachas v'Yisrael. Demin b'she'enoi minoi. Very important reminder. Zok tehilge Rashi, this is only when it's not in its min, we have a din of shishim. Chotz michametz has a different din. Avamin b'minoi. Then the Gemara Mzacham teaches us, even b'mashu, we pass like Rav. Why? Min b'mina v'rashu kirav u'b'chametz gezer she'ina mina atu minoi. That's why we're going to be more chamer. So the classical case of min be'enoi minoi, that's when you can have bittul b'shishim. We continue with the Mishnah. Akum shahaya ma'avir misal kadiyayin makam lemakam. A guy that was transporting jugs of wine of a yid from place to place, and the Jew leaves, and now the guy has wine in a certain area for a significant amount of time. Then mutter. If the wine is always watched, it's going to mutter. But if the yid says he's going away for a while, enough time that the guy could have made a hole, patched the hole, and they dried up the patch, then Rashba Goimer, Kadesh Yiftach Chavis, then if the yid is going to be away for that amount of time, then there's going to be a concern. If not, not. Case number 2 of the Mishnah. If wine is left in a wagon or a boat with a guy, v'halach, and he goes off in a short distance, Nechlas l'medina v'rachatz, mutter. He goes to the city, takes the bath, the wine is mutter. But if the guy knows that the yid left for a significant amount of time, the amount of time to siphon out the wine and then replug the hole, and we're seeing over here that the classical rules of Shemira, perhaps of Amirsis, a Yoitzev Inichnas, is only going to help if he doesn't know that you left. But if you tell the guy, I'm out of here for 2 hours, I'm out of here for half a day, then of course, there's much more of a concern. Continues the Mishnah, case number 3. Someone leaves a guy in his store, even though the yid goes in and out, he's not there straight, mutter. Then our but if the yid says, okay, I'm out of here for the next 10 hours, I'm out of here for the next 3 days, then it's enough time for the guy to tamper it and fix up that which he did, then it will be a problem. Case number 4, if he's sitting with a guy at a table, and he left a flask on the table, and a flask on the cupboard, is mutter. Everything's going to be aser. Chavis v'suchos asurais, stumais are going to be mutarais. Why? Because it's meant an entity that is to be used. So says the Gemara, Heichi Dami, what is the case? So asks the Gemara, Heichi Dami b'cheskas hamishtamer. The Mishnah said that if a guy was helping a yid carry the wine from place to place, and the yid left the guy with the wine, then if it's b'cheskas hamishtamer, it's mutter. So ask the Gemara the $1 million question. What creates? What is this chazaka? Keditanya, as we learned in our brayso, someone hired donkey drivers or workers carrying tahayros, his tar items. The halacha is afilu hiflig mehan yoser mimil. Even if he's not with the workers the whole time, and the workers were amaratzim, and even if he's a mil away from them, tahayros, we still assume that which is tar, stay tar. Bavim amar lehem, a similar idea that we saw in the Mishnah. But if he told the workers, go, and I'm going to come after you. Kivan shenis alma einoi mehem, then tairoisav temeois. Since he hid his eye from them, then the tahar item is tamei. So similar to our Mishnah, that as soon as the person knows that you're no longer there with him, that is the moment that we have to be concerned, and that is the moment that which is tahar would become tamei, and that was where in our Mishnah we'd have to be worried about the goyim. But says the Gemara, Maishna Reisha, Maishna Seifa. What's the chilik? Amar Rav Yitzchak, b'mitayr chamarav upayalav. Says Rav Yitzchak, the difference is, if he purified the workers for this reason, he told them to go to the mikvah before transporting the tahar items, then, even if the worker is more than a male, it will remain tahar. Ihachi asked the Gemara, Seifa Nami. And the end of the Mishnah as well, the item should remain tahar. The seifa as well, who cares that the worker knows that the balabayis is out for a while? Lamaisi went to the mikvah. Says the Gemara, in amaretz makvid al maga chaveroi. Amaretz is not going to care if someone else comes. We're not worried about him. But once he knows the owner is not there, then he's not going to be concerned if someone else comes and touches the stuff, and that is the concern. Says the Gemara, mamish, the same issue. Then the first case of the Mishnah, we should say the same thing. Again, back to square one. What's the chilik? Amar Rava. Comes along Rava as we turn over to Samach Testament base, and Rava finally explains the chilik is going to be in a kimta in the case of the Mishnah, b'balahem derech halachsain, that the Brisa is referring to a case in which he could come back derech halachsain. Look at the Tabrashi. Then he's afraid that any moment he might come back, and that's when we do not have to be concerned, because there's the mirsis, the fear of the Balabayis. Says the Gemara Yachi, if that is true, Seifa Nami, and the Seifa as well, Kima Damar Lahem, Lachuv Ani Ba Acharechem. And the Seifa as well, when he said, go and I'll come to you, excuse me, Yachi Seifa Nami, explains the Gemara, no, since in the Seifa he said to them, Lachu go, Ani Ba Acharechem, I'm going to come after you, Samcha Daitayu. Therefore, there was a Smichas Das. He's confident that he's not going to come for some time, and that's the reason why you'd have a problem. So the chilik is going to be similar to what we saw, is that whenever there's the confidence, whenever there's the lack of mirsus, he's not actually afraid that the Baal Bais is going to show up. That's going to be the moment we have to be concerned, unless we have a matziv of Bolem Derech Halachsain, unless we have a matziv that the owner could indeed come and check up on him suddenly. We continue 3 lines down on Samach Testament base. Says the Gemara, Hamaniach Akam Bechanutai, Hamaniach Yenoi Bekarna Besvina. 2 more cases in the Mishnah. The same din we saw in both of these cases, that it's mutter unless the guy has a significant amount of time. When the Baal Bayis or the Yid says he's leaving for a significant amount of time, that's when there has to be a concern. So as classical Gemara sense, the question is, why do we need 3 cases teaching the same din? Says the Gemara, we need all 3 cases. Tana akum. Because if the Mishnah taught only the case of an akum who's carrying the wine, then I would have thought that what? That what? Maybe the Yid will come back suddenly and see me. But in the case of the wagon or the boat, in the case of the wagon of the boat, then you would say that no, why not? Because the guy could steer the boat away, and the Yid will never be able to see him. And therefore, he could do what he wants, and therefore there's more of a concern. That's why that case we wouldn't know the din. If we only taught that case, I would have thought Misham Desavar, Tel Maasi Ba'orcha Achriti. Then no, in that case, maybe there's also concern. Maybe there still is a level of mirsis. Why? Because maybe the guy thinks that he could come Baruch Achriti in another way. He could suddenly appear, and therefore there still is a level that he's concerned. V'kai aguda v'chazilei, and I'll go up high on a wall and he'll see me. Aval akam bechanutai. But in the case of the guy, when the yid leaves him in his store, ema achid alei libava, then the guy, maybe it is aser. Why? Because the guy can lock the door. Vavin makom adabai. There's a higher level of concern. So kamash malan. Then in all three cases, we have the same din that any time there's a concern, there's a mirsis. Any time the yin might show up, then it's going to be mutter. Whereas if there's no concern, if the guy has flexibility and availability to do what he wants, then it's going to be aser. Continues the Gemara in discussing the amount of time in which we said the mirsis exists for, and this is actually something which will become very relevant, because we'll have to know practically how long could a guy be left l'chatchila b'diavad with an item and not have to be concerned. So Amar Rabba bar Chana, Amar Rav Yechra, machlokes b'shel tzid. The machlokes in the Mishnah is where the lid of the barrel is made out of plaster. Aval b'shel tet, if it's made out of clay, divrei hakol k'dei sheyiftach v'yigoyv, has to have enough time for the guy to remove the lid, put on a new lid, and have it dried off. Only in a case in which we have a lid that was made out of a material that you could bore a hole through it and then plug back up the hole like Sid plaster, that's when a shorter amount of time is the barometer. But if it's not such, but rather it's a clay, it's tit, then everyone agrees you need to have the amount of time to make a new cover. Meisvei asked the Gemara, Amar Ashvag l'chachamim, Shenliah said to the chachamim, Aloi, Shetu my nicker. I don't understand. If their hole was made and the hole was plugged up, says the Gemara, you could recognize that. Bein milamala, bein milamata. Meaning you'll know that the item was tampered, and therefore there should be no concern because you'll know that the guy did something. So explains the Gemara. Now, that the machlokes is both of all materials. Hainu diktanis to my nicker. Now I understand. Bein milamata. Machlokes is only with clay. If there's a hole from the top of, says the Gemara, if the whole top of Sid, then how do you be able to notice? Explains the Gemara, my kami rabbana. Similarly, like we saw previously, there was a disconnect in what exactly was going on over here. Shem Gamliel did not actually understand what the Rabbanim were saying, and this is what he said. If you're discussing a case of a tit lid, then what? You shall say, but if it's not made out of tit, but rather it's made out of plaster, that is what Rav Shimon Gamliel said to the Chachamim. But what did the Chachamim respond? What you can tell from the tab, he doesn't ever think. The Yid does not think that he's going to turn it over. See from the bottom, Inami is in the Cholim, or at times it's going to meld and it's going to melt with the rest of the lid. You won't be able to tell, and that's the reason why the case will be different. Stop over here. We'll continue figuring out the halachas and the parameters of the mirsis of how long the guy could be kept the next year. B'siyata dishmai.